young Polish guy called Adam told me about an old Nazi prison in Warsaw where lots of young people were killed by Nazi soldiers. We went along to Patriotic prison to find out more about this story and why these horrors are still fresh in the minds of young Poles.
We're outside the remains of the Patriotic prison in Warsaw, an old Nazi prison that was used basically to commit retribution against those who were involved with the Polish Uprising. Thank you for bringing me here, Adam.
Thank you.
Could you tell me a little bit more about this place?
Absolutely. This place was the main prison in Warsaw during the occupation, and over 100,000 Poles were imprisoned here during the war. Some of them were political prisoners that belonged to the intelligentsia, the Polish intellectual elite, university professors, politicians. Others were just random people that the Germans caught on the street in so-called łapankas or roundups, when Germans would take 400 people that were on the street, imprison them here, and use them as hostages.
Right.
In case the Polish resistance did anything, the normal standard procedure was that for every German, 100 Poles would be killed.
So this wasn't just about punishment, this was kind of like a blackmail, right? They would hold families here, and if there was any more in the way of an uprising from the Polish, they would kill them, right?
Yes, and sometimes they actually killed people for no reason. There were no Germans killed, there were no specific actions. The Germans had a program of extermination. The Jews were, of course, the primary targets, but the Catholic Slavic population were also doomed. If the war would have continued, millions of Poles would have died. Actually, millions did die, but it would have been in the tens of millions. So the strategy actually worked. For the first few years, the Polish resistance, they withheld from taking any large-scale action. They focused on derailing German trains, blowing up tracks, gathering intelligence. But they waited until 1944, when the Soviet army was nearby, to launch the Warsaw Uprising, which in the end cost 250,000 Polish lives.
And so it wasn't really just fighting 8 people that were killed either. In fact, there's a plaque on this tree. It shows the people that were killed here, 40, 18, 17, and 7. They would take whole families. Even young people would be brutally slaughtered here, right?
Absolutely. If you're out on a Sunday stroll, for example, with your family, it was completely possible to end up in one of these so-called łapankas, the roundups. So walking out on the street in Warsaw during the war was you never knew if you would be taken or not. It could happen at any moment, and it didn't matter how old you were.
And this is something that young Polish people, well, of course they don't remember this. It's something that their families talk about, right? And it's something that's really inspiring. You mentioned young people are being inspired by this to remember their history and fight back against the kind of far-left attitudes that ultimately was part of this sort of chaos and the slaughter.
Absolutely. Since the numbers were so high, in Poland around 20% of the country's population died during World War II, which means 1 out of 5. So in every family there is a story. Everybody has a story to tell. Either their parents were sent to Siberia by the communists, to the Gulag labor camps, or they were killed in Auschwitz, or they were killed here in Pawiak prison. So everybody knows their history very well in Poland, even if you're young. And this is what makes us cherish our national sovereignty so much. We have only been free for 30 years, since 1989. And now we are very prepared to protect our freedom. So national sovereignty overall.
So I've long wondered why it is that the people in Poland, the young people in Poland, hear these stories from their grandparents and almost remember it themselves, and it makes them patriotic and it makes them want to fight back. But in England it's so different. I wonder why you think that might be.
Well, I think a big part of it is the fact that we were occupied here. We had the troops here. Of course, in the UK you had the Blitz, but it wasn't the daily terror that people experienced here. And if we say in the US, for example, they didn't even experience the Blitz. They only sent their soldiers abroad, and of course it's horrible when they come back in caskets, young men. But the scale isn't the same. Poland suffered 6 million. So the scale, combined with the fact that it was daily terror here on site, is probably the difference.
And I guess that, combined with the fact that the scars of the war are still visible here in the city and the young people see it almost every day.
Absolutely. When it comes to Warsaw, after the uprising, the Germans decided to raise the city to the ground. Around 90% of all buildings were either razed to the ground or so badly damaged that they had to be razed to the ground later. The few surviving buildings, they all wear scars, grenade shrapnel, bullet holes, and so on. So you are reminded. Also, the buildings that were built up, that were reconstructed, for example, our beautiful old town, it's all built in the 50s, and people know it looks like it's old, but it's not.
And people remember. Well, thank you so much for your insight, Adam.
Thank
Really
you, Mike, for
appreciate it.
having me here.
Cheers. I think it's a really important point that while the young people of Britain know about the Blitz, they know about the war, the fighting happened overseas. Here in Warsaw, it happened right here. It's still visible. There's a Nazi war camp in the middle of the city. It's something that people remember, it's something that people see every day, and perhaps that's why young people in Poland really understand their history and are voting more conservatively than ever. I'm Jack Buckby for the Rebel.media. I'm out here in Poland reporting on a story that the mainstream press simply won't touch. We're finding out why the Polish youth are so conservative and so brave in the face of far-left tyranny. Will you help me cover our modest expenses? Will you please go to rebelpoland.com and support alternative news media?